The Get On Living Safely campaign is sponsoring this podcast to remind you to keep your spending in the community. Supporting local businesses keeps food on the table for our friends and neighbors. Follow them on social media and learn more at getonlivingsafely.com. We checked in with Brett Huus of Strations Audio Productions. We talked about his long road into music production, the start of his business, how he approaches a project, how he's been adapting to COVID, and more. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brett.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
My name is Brett Huus. I was born in Duluth, Minnesota, and grew up in eastern Wisconsin, in Neenah, Wisconsin, actually, in the Fox Valley, what's known as the Fox Valley. How I got into music production was basically, I started writing my own music in about 1976 or so, in that period of time. And that was at about the point where some of the consumer, prosumer gear was starting to become available. In other words, 4-track reel-to-reels and such that would allow you to overdub and do multi-track recording. So I wanted to be able to do that for my own music projects. That was the primary incentive for doing that. You know, over time, I just continued doing it. It got to the point where some of my friends would ask me to help them with theirs, and then at some point I decided that maybe this is something I really enjoyed and I should continue doing. And I still write and record my own music and release it, but I think that, you know, for a day-to-day living, it's, you know, a great way to make my living. So I enjoy it.
Strations, it kind of just snowballed from this beginning of kind of experimenting with music, recording, and then it turned into that? Or did it take some time to get to what you are now?
Oh, well, you know, every house or apartment I lived in from that period on, from the middle to late 70s on, I always had a room in which I had my music gear set up. And later on, it actually got to be to the point where I was actually starting to record on such a regular basis that it just started to become the thing to do. And then I moved out to Brownsville, Minnesota, and the whole basement was sort of a production area. And I wrote a business plan. So short answer is no, because everything takes a lot longer than most people think. The trick is to keep focused on it. So at one point I had a job that, you know, I knew that it was evolving because the industry it was in was evolving. And I went to the Chamber of Commerce and had an interview for a SBA loan with Service Corps of Retired Executives. And they told me, of course, what I didn't want to hear, which is, why don't you wait, don't borrow money, and wait and see what happens with your job, because, you know, you could get a severance package and so on and so forth, and unemployment for the period, and work on your equipment, work on your services, and get more customers part-time. It turned out to be prophetic advice, actually. So in 93, basically what you do is you set up a list of things that you need to do, and you follow them. And what were the things I needed to do? I needed a business framework to be taken seriously, so I incorporated. It's much easier to do now than it was then, but I did that first. And I started working out of my house really from the, say, late 80s on through to about 1993, which is when I incorporated. And then in 1998, the exact thing happened that the Service Corps gentleman said would happen, or if I suspected it would happen with my employer. It gave me the opportunity to walk away and have some cash to get rolling. I had all the equipment. I had the business plan refined and written, although when you write a business plan, until you really get rolling, a good chunk of it's fiction, really, because you don't know. It really became something where, you know, it was a incremental, and I worked on it a lot in my spare time. And, you know, along with the technical, the administrative, and the entrepreneurial things, that sort of separated my business into those three chunks and went from there. So that's how I did it. And I picked out the name Strations because I thought it, you know, of course it was, you know, you think, a moment of inspiration. It turns out that, you know, I was thinking of illustrations like with sound. So I was thinking about layers of sound, because multi-track recording is basically layers. Well, it turns out the word stration or strata is from the word layer, strata. It wasn't like I knew that, it just happened that way. So I picked out a name and got a logo built and did all the things that create an identity. And by 98, the opportunity came about. I was still working out of my house, and I had some clients in La Crosse, and I had attended a Christmas party with one of my clients invited me, and I met the owner of the AVS group. He knew a friend of mine in the business I was in previously who happened to be there too, and he introduced us. And he asked me how I like being self-employed, and I told him, well, it's great, except that now I need space, and he said, oh, come with me down the hallway. They had a big studio room. We still do. It's 2,400 square foot, video, audio, you name it, room, photography. He invited me into the room, and all that was in here was where I am now is a table and an ISO booth, big enough to fit drums. Of course, that was what I was thinking right away. Is it big enough? Can I get a drum kit in there? Because drums are the noisiest thing you can think of. And so, it was, and we talked about what we'd call a strategic partnership. They didn't really think they needed a full-time audio person, but they did use audio, and they would allow me the opportunity, at least, to see if I could do the kind of work they needed done. I formed a relationship with them, and I'm still in this building 22 years later.
Yeah, it's interesting about, kind of a collaborative approach to that. Speaking of the creative side, what's your process when approaching a new project? I'm sure some people have some set ideas, but I'm sure you bring a lot to the table as well.
When I have an inquiry for a project, here's how the email comes in or phone call. Hey, I got this song I want to do. How much will it cost? That's what they ask me. Now, people who have done this before and know what it's in, they have a fairly good idea. Around this market, we have a lot of people who are either first timers or have done not a lot of it and do it part time, and they do a great job. However, they don't always know what they don't know. So basically, my approach is to ask them a lot of questions, like, what are you going to use this for? Do you have a budget in mind? I mean, are you going to do this as a band or as an individual? What instruments are you going to play? How many instruments are you going to play? Am I mixing this and mastering it? Am I just tracking this? What am I doing? Are we doing video for you if you need video shots for your YouTube thing? So I go through a series of questions, actually, because an estimate means nothing without context. So basically, that's how I get context, is to go through the process and get a lot of information. Because if you're going to be wrong about a dollar amount, it could send somebody over the edge on the project and you lose it, when really what it came down to is they did not understand what it was they really needed or wanted, because they don't know what to ask. And then it's a matter of figuring out, well, who are the people that a lot of times they'll ask me, who can they hire for studio people? I don't know all the musicians around this area, but I know a lot of them. And I feel like I kind of have a feeling on what their particular spice is. It's almost like, this guy's chili, this guy's saffron, this person's pepper. I mean, because the type of music they need, if you need a pedal steel player, well, we have some really good players around this area, but we don't have 500 pedal steel players. We got like 2 or 3 that are really good. We have about 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 10, as many as 10 really good mando players around here. But each one of them has a little different emphasis. So they rely on me to know some of that too. And for that, I like to hear a demo. If they've got a rough demo they've recorded at home, or, just give me an idea what you want us to do. Do you want me to help produce it? Do you want me to engineer and shut up? Or do you want a little bit of collaboration? I mean, it really comes down to a lot of different things, because every project is different and every artist requires a different sort of approach.
You have your hands on a lot of local music. It seems like if people are announcing a CD in the area, it has your name on it in some capacity. How has the local music scene been for you?
The local music scene is great. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work on some things that were done nationally and stuff, and that could never have happened without the kind of technology we have. We have a real diverse music scene, everything from acoustic to electric to metal to EDM. And it's really interesting to me to find, and I see my role as not only to be either silent and just facilitate it, but to also help mentor. I mean, really, in terms of service to your community, you really want to try and do your best to try and help people as well as run a business. You have to, of course, have to make some money and so on and so forth. But one of the things that I find about the local music is there's a lot of really talented writers. There's some people like Dan Berger who've created the Songwriters Corner. There's a lot of collaboration, and that's really when I got started. There was a thing called the Coffee Jam. It was a jam session. It was below where the Rose restaurant is now. It used to be Hooters or something like that. There, Esteban's, I think, years ago. In the basement, they had a coffee house type jam, and you could sign up to play. And that's where I collaborated and met a lot of people. Well, the same is true of the songwriter corner that Dan started on the north side. And so there was a lot of interest in songwriting. People take a pretty big interest in. And along with my other colleagues like Mike von Muchow, and then I know there's Jesse Wolf who runs studios. I don't really know a lot of the other people. A lot of people have, facility in their house or things. There's been a lot of opportunity to get, creative work out there. I mean, and having, a guy like Bill Miller come out of this area with, multiple Grammy Awards, and with, surprisingly, when he left La Crosse, he got a hand up from Michael Martin Murphey, who's a really well-known multi-million selling recording artist. And he, through sort of providence, ended up living near Westby for a long time when he wasn't touring. And so, he was in the area and he came through and he needed services, and he worked with my friend Mike von Muchow, and he worked with me, and I got the opportunity to master one of Bill's records. So, it all sort of is a way of really, there's a synergy going on. There's a gentleman by the name of Mike Stidoff who was a session musician in Nashville for many years, and he moved up here. A friend of his, Dan Berger, had told him about the area, and he decided he'd rather be in a lower key atmosphere in doing his music, and he does stuff on the internet. And I can call him up or Josh Raby over at Dave's Guitar Shop and get certain things that only they can do. And there's other people like Jesse McDonald and other fiddle players, but the songwriters are the ones that generate the real revenue, because original material is really where it's at. It's hard to generate revenue from doing covers. You have people like John Smith, who's been around for a number of years from Tremolo, just an excellent songwriter, and people like the String Ties group. There's just a lot of people around here doing it, and there's more opportunity than ever. Of course, this period of time with COVID has been difficult for anybody who's trying to be a creative. When you can't really gather, it's very hard to do. But I think that the songwriting movement and the creative movement around La Crosse is really strong, and I enjoy it. I don't see any reason why I would want to have a traditional retirement, the kind where you just stop,
Exactly. So speaking of COVID, and also maybe what's next for you, that's probably informed what's next on your agenda. How has COVID affected you, and has that allowed you to plan for the future, or what's next for your business?
The COVID thing has definitely had an impact. I mean, certainly my business customers, which, that we have a mix of business customers, creative customers, educational institutions, etc., local community groups, symphony, things like that. As hard as it is made it for them, it's just as hard for us. I mean, fortunately, we've been at it long enough. We have some resources to continue. I think what we're doing, and for instance, when I have a session in the studio here, they come in with masks. If they go in my booth, they have to be masked until they get in there, and then we're separated. We have a separate air system in our building just because of the way the owner built the building and built this room. We needed to have control over the fan speed and the temperature in this suite because of all the gear. We also have a 2,400 square foot room, which allows us a considerable amount of social distancing, along with plexiglass panels and things that you can put up. And, I always put something in front of the drummer anyway, unless they're ISO'd in the booth, just to keep sound under control for the rest of the microphones and stuff if they all want to be in the same space. But it's been challenging for the business customers that we have, because not only has business been impacted for them, but that means their budgets, and it means that things that they do on a regular basis have changed. So it has a lot of that effect. We were already getting into streaming when this happened. My colleague across the hall at ABS LLC is primarily a video person, although he does some audio, and I'm primarily audio, but I do video too. So we've teamed up on streaming. We've streamed a Bill Miller concert from this building. We streamed Ariane Leiden from this building. We're going to do another one with her band at the Pump House with no audience. I've done the La Crosse Symphony Orchestra. Certainly we just had limited camera ability to use only 2 cameras at that concert, so it's a little bit difficult. But we've done a fair amount of streaming work, and our thing is we're thinking that we need to make it as compelling as watching Mark Knopfler on Netflix or on YouTube, okay? If it isn't that good, you're just not going to be. So we need multiple cameras. We need good lighting, colors. We need really creative camera work. So that's what we're trying to do now, because I see this as a window on the world. This is not just all of a sudden your fans can't come and see you. But why not think of it differently? Why not think about it, your YouTube channel? And I like YouTube because their video and audio is the best I've heard of all the streaming platforms at this point, are going to expand if you do a certain amount of these, even under normal circumstances. You have your own TV channel, but you got to make it compelling. I heard Jackson Browne say once, it's not bad work if you can get it, but you got to make it stick. That's really what it's about, I think. And I think going forward, we're going to have a return to concerts at some point and where people can have human contact. But I really believe we have to develop alternate ways to market our music and our businesses to the general masses. And things like this have made us work faster and harder at it. We had a lot more time to delve into technical things. Normally, you're up to your neck in project management all the time and trying to get schedules and things going on, that the time for research and development is a little bit difficult. But that's where I see things going, is why shouldn't String Ties have a worldwide audience for their bluegrass? Why shouldn't Toaster Ghost have the same? Why shouldn't any of these brands have those things? There's really no reason. The trick is to make it compelling, and that involves a lot of things.
Absolutely. I've talked to a lot of musicians about streaming their shows, and some of them have said they didn't like it at all, but others have said it's offering them up to a new audience and people that are actually listening to them versus being in a cloudy bar or, things like that. So if people want to find out more about the streaming services you offer, or potentially even talk about maybe a project they have, where can people find out more?
Of course, I like to send them to www.soundstrations.com. That's our website. Also, they can get a hold of me through Facebook. We have the Soundstrations has a Facebook page. Prefer email to start out because it's just too much to deal with the phone and all the spam I get, like what I'm hearing right now in the background is coming in here. Basically, that's the best way to get a hold of me. A lot of what we're offering is on the website under services. I don't know how much is up there about streaming, although we have some links to some streaming stuff we've done that I think people will enjoy watching.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Locals. Subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.